Hey guys, you're watching Daniel and Gian. Welcome back. I know you guys aren't the biggest fans of the podcast, as we can tell.
They don't know about the podcast, so don't say that.
Well, you guys can always join us on our podcast. We've put them out every week now for the past couple months, so stay tuned to those. But welcome back to reviews. We'd like to get a few more reviews out there soon, so let us know in the comment section if there's anything you guys want us to check out, and we will definitely take it into consideration. No guarantees that we'll do it, but we appreciate the input. And today we're going to be doing our first review in a long time, but we're doing the 2001 feature film Aśoka, starring SRK. For those of you unfamiliar, I highly doubt many of you are not, but this is a kind of dramatical biopic about the emperor Asoka from the 3rd century BCE, and he was part of the Maurya Empire, and he is famous for spreading Buddhism around the regions he conquered.
As a matter of fact, he, under his reign or rule, whatever you want to call it, he had the most Indian land. He had, in terms of landmass, like he had the largest empire for all Indian rulers.
And at the end of the film, it kind of tells you like that the things that happened once he died and stuff. Like a lot of what he did crumbled immediately after he passed on, and whoever took over for him didn't do as good a job of keeping stuff up and running. But he's obviously, there's enough stories around it.
Well, that last guy before him didn't kill 300,000 people, so you know. When you don't have that under your belt to spread fear, it's probably a little hard to maintain a place that large.
Fair enough, but let's get into the film. I'm gonna jump right in from the end and say that if the claim to fame is this guy is like he's known for spreading Buddhism around India, we didn't see much of that at all. The way the film ends kind of abruptly, and then you start, you get some title cards up there telling you what happened after that big massacre that he was a part of.
It's almost like the film was a 2.5-hour prologue for his actual life.
Exactly. And I understand that you want to show, who he was and the transformation, but we don't actually see a transformation. We just kind of see the results. His transformation happens in the last, 5 seconds after the young boy, the prince of that kingdom, dies in his arms from the arrows that the soldiers put into him. That was a little frustrating, but
of course it's a story. It's a movie. It's not like the real life story. You got to make it dramatic somehow, which personally I wasn't a fan of, because actually I wanted the historical narrative more than just the Bollywood, aesthetics attached to this historical figure, which is what you get. You're going to have SRK in the lead. Of course, you're going to get song and dance just like you would expect any other, but what I was expecting I didn't get. Again, for a guy who's notorious for all of the battles he had, you get one, and it's at the end, and it's kind of shot weak. You don't really get that feeling of this ancient combat. It's hard to understand the Buddhist side of him if you don't actually ever see him being violent or ever actually seeing that side of him. Everything just felt like under this false umbrella of, well, we don't want to be too offensive because Indians might literally kill us because we portray him this way.
It was just a weird setup. There was a lot of stuff going on that wasn't explained that you kind of pick up along the way, but it could have been set up a little better.
And then there was the added tension of the brothers, which I'm not saying is not real, but the way it was portrayed, it felt just theatrical. It felt Shakespearean is a better way to put it.
It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, we start off in the films about, two stepbrothers or half brothers or whatever brothers. I don't think they were blood related, but they grow up together and there's a rivalry and figuring out, it kind of reminded me of Gladiator, where it was like the son is normally the person that takes over, but the father was going to pass the crown on
to someone else completely.
Yeah, exactly. Who was more worthy, because Aśoka was popular with everyone because he was the leader of the battles, while the other son, like, I don't know, at the end of the film they mentioned that he can't have children, and I don't know what that was supposed to be an implication of.
He was a Dindu, right? Dindu nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. He was just plotting behind the scenes to try to get Aśoka killed the whole film.
And he couldn't even do that well. He couldn't even kill him.
Right. But the grandfather giving up his throne to go and be a Gianist, or to follow Gianism, and then, you know, throwing the sword into the river because the sword was evil, you know, and you had to feed the sword. You know, I like that setup. I was like, oh, this kind of feels like an old school, like, Hong Kong kung fu movie. You know, the Shaolin type epic battles where, like, one brother fights the other battle and then the sword is actually alive. The sword needs to be fed kind of thing. And it had, like, moments like that where I was like, okay, this is kind of fun. And I was waiting for these, like, campy, cheesy action scenes that never came to fruition, you know. And there was little scenes in between, like when he leaves, his mom tells him to leave, so he goes and, like, lies to everybody about who he is, and you know, that guy that's always trying to beat him up and beat him in competitions, like that for me felt like straight out of a Shaw Brothers Shaolin kung fu movie. You know, this little bit of comedic relief with this
competition and the little kid and the.
Exactly, you know, and for me that was like, okay, this is his training session. This is when he's going to come back even stronger or change.
When he learns.
Yeah,
his trials and tribulations. He doesn't really learn anything because he's the same king the whole time. He's so powerful.
Right.
The whole.
Well, he falls. The only time we see a change in him is he falls in love with Kareena Kapoor, and then when he thinks she dies, he, like, falls into depression, and this. I guess she's Buddhist too. She tries to, like, save his soul, you know, and marries him, has his child, but his brother's going after and killing him, trying to kill him one last time was enough. That was killing his mother, which I get it too. Like, you guys have been trying to kill me, and then you take out my mom. You know, that was the
game
last
over
straw.
at that point.
Just inconsistent. It was inconsistent.
My biggest thing is I felt like for once, it's weird for me to say this, but I felt like they were limited by budget. I know almost every Indian film was limited by budget, but they were able to do so much stuff in terms of, like, putting stuff into the frame that they kind of forgot to make the movie. So, you know, there's a lot of wide shots, and so you can see, like, oh, look, we have all these extras. Look, we have elephants. Look, we have, like, in the battle scenes,
so,
right?
Look,
Look,
they got so caught up in production that they forgot the story.
They forgot to visually show the story. I mean,
right.
There's not a lot of shots where there's depth of field where you can actually see, here's a close-up. And at a certain point in the movie, I started watching the movie for that as opposed to the story. Like, I was just analyzing technically, like, okay, this is a long take, but it's not because it's adding value or something, like a Scorsese tracking shot, and, you know, it's supposed to represent something. No, it's like, hey, we just
want to make sure that you guys see everything we did.
We got it. We, like, here's the master shot, and that's all we're shooting today, because we have to shoot, like, 45 other scenes in the next 30 minutes, and we, you know, this is all we got. So, like, there was moments that I really enjoyed towards the beginning as well. You know, there was the scene in the forest when they're throwing the burning logs down during they're showing these battle scenes. Well, snippets of battle scenes, because you don't really see full battles except for the very last one. But
right.
Little cool moments. So there's a moment I liked, because I actually liked SRK as Aśoka. I felt like physically he actually matched up. Usually I think he's always, for me personally, he always looks either too young or too old for a role, and mostly it's, you know, the movies that I've seen, it's too old. Even though he might be 40, he looks 50 or something. And I'm not talking shit.
Yeah.
That's just what smoking does to people. But I felt like this one was perfect. Like, he looked right. He had the perfect body for it and all that stuff, where you just felt like this. Not saying he was like this back then, because as most people know, no one was shredded back then, and there was no workout regimens. You could be strong, but you weren't, like, you know, you didn't look like a steroid person.
He looked like he was in his physical prime, and he was like,
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It wasn't overkill.
And there was a scene, like, when he was, like, he snuck up somebody in the water, and he, like, grabbed him, and, you know, I don't know if he killed him or he's just strangled him or something, but I'm like, okay, see, those are the moments that I was into, you know, the more action stuff, I guess. But I didn't want action necessarily. It's just something more. I didn't, when I walked away from the movie, it's not what I expected. Because as I told you and other people, the reason why I wanted to see this movie in the first place is because his name was brought up among other, like, great leaders and empires and things like that, and I'm like, oh, I've never heard of him before. I've heard of the movie, but not him. And then, you know, I hear about the huge battles, the 300,000 in one day. I keep bringing that number up because that's the one that made me, like, one of these battles, literally 300,000 people died on the battlefield for this one battle, and I'm just like, that's a lot of people. It just goes to show you how different combat was back then, but
you know what it feels like really is like they didn't know what the story was supposed to be about, and it like what aspect of him, like, and it was, even though it was a 3-hour film, it was like not enough time to really go through it, so the end is rushed. But we don't see like, was he this great military strategist? We don't.
You don't see planning. You don't see
nothing. No, it was just basically, hey, let's get on our horses and ride into each other, and just a lot of big, like, busy melees where you don't really see anything going on, with a few, close-up shots of some gruesome stuff happening here and there, and I think the goriest part about the film was the dead bodies on the ground as he's walking through the field. You saw like.
Well, I mean, there's also the whole part at the end where the kid dies. I mean, that was a pretty violent part too. Unnecessarily dies too. Like he literally just dies to give people dramatic tension or something.
I mean, even if you wanted to make this like super happy ending, you could have added. In his blood rage, he sees, whatever the character's name was, and he's like, oh shit, she's alive. All this anger I have inside of me is for naught. And that like kind of brings him out of the zone that he's in, because he's like kind of in a fog where he just wants revenge and death, and somebody brings him out of the fog.
Yeah, the little boy dying. Like, why was he even at the battlefield?
Well, he got brought out of the fog because somebody told them. The guy who lied to him in the first place about her being dead, her bodyguard, like, he sees him dead, and he mentions something about her, so he goes looking, like, all of a sudden he's like, oh wait, she's alive. Or they had these weird little things where like he felt her like presence and she felt his presence, like they knew where they were near each other.
Yeah, Last Jedi.
Kind of weird shit. Even though
like some Star Wars stuff.
When she went looking for him, she didn't have that same little feeling. Like, just, I don't know.
Inconsistency. That's at the end of the day, it's inconsistency.
Inconsistencies for sure. And
it didn't for me. It didn't sell the fact that like he's gonna give everything up for this woman. I wasn't sold on that fact, because you're to believe that they saw each other once, and they fell in love Bollywood style. I mean, that's kind of the only way to put it, is that's the movie. I'm not necessarily for that. I don't believe that people necessarily fell in love back then that way. I could be wrong, but
and to be honest with you, that doesn't bother me as much as like there's no development of. We don't even know what her religion was. Like the people that we know that the girl that he ends up marrying that has his kids, she's a Buddhist. But I don't know, because the end, like I said, we go to the end of the film and then you got a bunch of title cards talking about his like spreading of Buddhism. Like,
and that's rule number one. You show, don't tell.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't see anything. Like, I didn't see some like sort of enlightenment. I guess his mom was a Buddhist too, so that's why like a lot of people will challenge his claim to the throne. I still don't understand the connection to his brother, his stepbrother, his half brother, or whatever. Like, if I'm gonna come up with my own math here, his grandfather was the emperor. He steps down, so his great uncle, his granduncle, his grandfather's brother comes in and takes over, and the guy that's trying to kill him is the uncle's brother. But does the uncle like marry his mom, or just because they raised them together in the same court, so they call them brothers?
I mean, that did happen back then a lot, just to be fair.
Yeah,
royalty stayed within royalty because that's how they kept the bloodline pure, quote unquote. So it's not.
Well, that's just how they stopped distant claims to the throne, really.
Yeah, but also that's just how it was as well. Like, that's just you marry the queen, and if the queen
still happening,
the queen is your mother, well, then so be it,
Right.
That's how it was. I mean, that's how it was for the Assyrians. That's what they would do, and learning about the Assyrians is actually how I learned about him. So like, to me, there might be some cross things going on here. I mean, I'm not going to say that incest is every single kingdom, but it's not an unfair assumption for some things.
Yeah,
either way,
family.
The point is that you're trying to make is you're you're speculating on all these things. And not to say that if you would have known all these things, it would have made the movie better, but you can't have this huge family drama and then not really show any of it other than just superficial stuff. That's my thing. You can't have the Sopranos and then never show any Sopranos-like moments where you show the family together eating and having fun.
They were trying to figure out how to get Kareena Kapoor in there and make her important somehow. I feel like that's the issue. And I don't understand why they couldn't make her like the wife.
They also used cheap tropes, though. They were using cheap tropes just to get the past drama. Yeah. Like, we got to have the insider who's going to snitch and rat everybody out. Like, they made it the most obvious character who's going to play both sides, and then he gets his at the very end. Like, oh my God, I'm shocked. What? It's this guy? Whatever. I forgot his position, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, there was that one guy who's trying to...
No, I get... Yeah, absolutely.
And then they're all mad. All the other senators or whatever, they're all mad. Like, oh, how could you? Like, what? Didn't you hear him say, like, I'm about to do this stuff? Like, I think it was literally that simple where the guy's like, I'm going to do it. And then...
Or, like, you can't kill me. That's why you can't be emperor. You would never kill your own family. I would kill my own family. Like, that little... And then the dude, the Asian-looking homeboy comes by and kills it for him because he tried to stab him in the back. I don't know.
It's just like I said. I think they just forgot to make the movie. I think they did their job in terms of like production design or like clothing and things like that, locations. But in terms of actual gripping drama, memorable, I don't think it is. I think actually, as a matter of fact, I think this individual could absolutely be retackled again, with more modern techniques and things like that. With someone who isn't SRK or some other big person. Don't give me Tiger Shroff. Give me like someone I've potentially never heard of before.
I mean, up to this point, have we seen a good, like, sword and sandal historical epic
out of India?
Or Bollywood in general, yeah.
Out of India, not you, but I've seen some that are interesting where I'm like, okay, this is not bad. It still lacks on certain moments like story. I forget how to say it's the name of the movie, but it's Ready, like something Ready. That's a pretty good one.
Southern.
Yeah, it came out like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and it's like 3 hours. He's one of the people who was rebelling against the English around like the whole Lakshmi or whatever. So they were like rebels together and are like in that same thing. So it's just like constant fighting of like skirmishes and like it's battles. Everything's like that, and story wise, it's a little like. Well, that's just a little though, just a little. Because you can tell they went more action than story for that. Like they.
But that also that sounds like Southern Indian cinema in general. Like the people in that region tend to want more action than.
I don't know, man. I like Southern cinema better than Bollywood cinema, to be honest with you.
Every time?
Most of the time. If I had to choose between the two, like on a Friday night, if I was gonna go watch one, I'd probably choose a Southern film. Regardless if I know it's going to be outlandish, ridiculous, or whatever, they're just, I don't know. I just like the production values better. It's just not as false or as fake. I don't have to watch like big name stars just not act. I'd rather just watch people I've never even seen before act. I don't have any preconceived notions of them, and visually films look better, and the action is always better. The action is always better, always, every time. I can't even name really a good Bollywood action film compared to like the good Southern action films I've seen.
We'll see what happens in the comment section.
And then the good epics with stories don't have any action. Like Padmavat was actually not Padmavat. Bajrao Mastani, I enjoyed what was going on. No action. Like
right.
You're gonna have amazing cinematography, a decent story, good performances, good costume, good sets, and then have like no battles.
Right. Could have used a little more action though, from what I recall. Like it would have been nice to see a little more. I think I liked that film more than you did though.
I don't mind Bajrao Mastani. I didn't like Padmavat because that one was dumb.
Padmavat. Okay.
She goes hunting a tiger in the very beginning with the bow and arrow. Like, okay, by herself with no hunting party. Like that's one of the things I learned about like old, people back then is like there's a hunting party was not just one person. It was like them plus their entire entourage. So like
that's why it's called a hunting party.
So there was no way, and then even George R.R. Martin recently said this. He's like, the one thing I hate about or I don't like about the Game of Thrones show is that when Robert went out in his hunting party, it was just like him and like 3 other people. But apparently it was supposed to be like this huge like epic thing where they all went out there.
Right, because I want to make sure nobody dies.
That's really what it comes down to, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I don't have enough weapons out there to kill.
So like the fact that she was like single-handedly killing tigers with a bow and arrow, like, okay, maybe.
Well, that's how badass she was, bro.
Yeah. Right. Except when it comes to men, apparently, right? She's no longer badass when a man comes into the picture, but no comment.
It is what it is. All right. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for us. Thanks for watching. You know the drill. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Ring the bell if you already are. And let us know in the comment section what you thought about this review. We'll see you on the next one.